Hello, I'm Dylan, and this is my first brew day on my new digiboil / digimash setup. And it's also my first time filming a brew day, so bear with me because I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. Today I'm going to be brewing a New England IPA or a Hazy IPA, depending on what you want to call it. This is sort of a mix between a Hazy IPA that I've been making recently and I currently have on tap, and Rogue Brewing's Batsquatch. I went to the local homebrew store the other day and bought everything that I needed for this recipe. In this bag is all of my grains that were just milled by the shop. It is 10.5 pounds of a pale ale malt, 1.5 pounds of white wheat malt, and 2 pounds of golden naked oat malt. I also bought Mosaic, Dorado, and Belma hop pellets that I'll be using in this recipe, and a package of Imperial Yeast's dry hop. My water is heating up right now. I am heating both my sparge and mash water at the same time, and then I'll just take off some of my sparge water. I added a quarter of a Campden tablet to get rid of chlorine. I also added gypsum and calcium chloride to get to a sulfate to chloride ratio of about 2 to 3, and that's to hopefully get a nice round mouthfeel while still allowing the hops to come through. I also added 2 milliliters of lactic acid to try to get closer to a pH of 5.2 to 5.4. Since this is my first time brewing on this setup, I'm just sort of throwing some volumes and temperatures out there and hoping that everything works out for the best, and maybe I'll adjust it for next time. Since I don't have the pump set up to recirculate my mash and maintain temperature better, I'm starting my mash pretty high. I'm heating my water to 168 degrees Fahrenheit, so that when it loses a few degrees from throwing in all of the grains and it loses a couple degrees from just sitting over an hour, it will still hopefully be able to extract all the sugars out. I also want to mash sort of high because I want some of the complex sugars that the yeast won't eat, so that I can have a more full-bodied beer at the end. Alright, so I have 8 gallons of my treated water heated to 168 degrees Fahrenheit. I am going to take 2 gallons off of this to sparge with later, and then we can start the mash. Alright, I'm going to stir this mash. Try to get it nice and mixed. Love to avoid dough balls. Okay, it looks like going down to 6 gallons of water was all right for this. I think I would like a little bit more water in my mash, so maybe next time I will have it a little bit higher volume. But all in all, this seems fine to me. Now the temperature reading on the kettle itself is at 163 after mashing in. I'm just gonna try to take a reading with this thermometer here. And it looks like this thermometer is saying it's about 152. So there is a pretty considerable difference between the temperature at the top and the temperature at the bottom. Maybe it's 154. But both of those are decent mashing temperatures, so I'm not too concerned about it. I'm just gonna give this one more quick mix, and then I'm gonna put the lid on and start the 60-minute timer for the mash. Okay, it is 60 minutes later and our mash is done. I did stir it one more time at 30 minutes. The thermometer on the kettle says 150, and I just took a temperature reading with my thermometer as well, and that also read 150, so I guess it sort of evened out the temperature throughout the entire kettle while the mash was going. Alright, so let's lift out this mash pipe and let it drain. Hopefully it's not too heavy for me. Make sure all the feet get on there. All right, that's not too bad. I did read on a forum that you get better efficiency, or at least this person did get better efficiency from their mash if they let the pipe drain completely and then sparge after that. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll just leave this for as long as it takes to drain pretty completely. And while I'm doing that, I'm actually going to start heating up the wort to a boil, just to reduce the amount of time that it's going to take. So I'll set it to about, say, 240 and turn both of the elements on. And let's see how long it takes. All right. All right, so I've hooked up a tube to the kettle that I put the water in that I took off earlier, and I'm going to just sort of sparge inside of this. Okay, that is all the water that came out of there, so I'm going to let that finish draining and we'll see what kind of volume we end up with. Okay, it actually looks like we're at about 5 gallons, which is lower than I wanted to be. I think that I underestimated how much the grain was going to absorb. Hopefully we can still make it work. Okay, we've reached a boil, so I'm going to try to turn off the 1000 watt heater and just use the 500 watt heating element for a boil and see how that treats me. I'm going to add my hop spider now, as well as my 60-minute hop addition, which is just a 1/4 ounce of Mosaic. We are 55 minutes into the boil, and about 15 minutes ago I submerged my wort chiller to heat sanitize it. And now I'm going to add my 5-minute addition of hops, which is 1/2 ounce of Dorado and 1/2 ounce of Belma. I ended up switching to using the 1000 watt heating element to keep the boil going, and it's been going pretty good with the lid on. I kept the lid on so that I didn't boil off too much liquid because my final volume was already pretty low. All right, the next hop addition is after the boil is ended. I'm doing a Whirlpool addition at 185 degrees. So the next time I see you, my kettle will be off and over to the sink where I can hook up the wort chiller. Okay, that was pretty quick to get to 180. And now I'm gonna add my 20-minute Whirlpool or hop stand, technically, since I don't have it recirculating. And it is 1 ounce of Mosaic, and the other 1/2 ounce from this package of Belma. And I'm gonna let that sit for 20 minutes. Alright, 20 minutes have passed and I took out the hop spider, so I'm going to turn the water back on and let this wort chill all the way back down. Alright, I'm transferring my chilled wort to my carboy for my fermenting. The wort chilled down to about 75 degrees, and I figure it'll lose a few more degrees in transfer. I'm going to take a post-boil gravity reading to determine my whole brewhouse efficiency and then later my ABV. Let's see if I can get this out of here without too much of a mess. Okay. Alright, so it looks like we are at 10:56 and we're just finishing transferring our wort. I'm going to tilt this a bit so I can get the rest of it out. I would really love to get as much wort out of this as possible because I don't think that we're going to get all the way to 5 gallons. Yeah, I think we only have 4.5 gallons. So it looks like that's about all I'm going to get out of there. Okay, the wort is fully transferred, so I'm going to pitch my yeast. I have dipped my yeast packet and my scissors into Star San to sanitize it so we don't get any contamination. And pitch the whole thing. Okay, I dipped my hands in Star San and I am going to aerate this by hand a little bit. So I'm just gonna hold my hand over and give it a good shake. Just to get some nice oxygen in there for the yeast to work on. Okay, just a quick shake, and I'll put my airlock in. My basement holds pretty steady at about 64 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's just going to be my fermentation temperature. That seems totally okay with me. So I will see you with an update soon. Alright, for you it's been a few seconds, but for me it's been about a month. I meant to film all of these steps, but I had a combination of forgetfulness and filming problems. 7 days after pitching the yeast, the fermentation was pretty much completely done, and at that point I dry hopped with 2 ounces each of Belma, Mosaic, and Dorado. And then 2 days after that, I transferred to the keg and force carbonated. It only attenuated down to 1018, which is pretty high, and it left me with a 5% ABV beer. I think that the lack of attenuation there is probably due to the very high mash temperature that I used, and I'll probably lower that for next time. I also didn't cold crash this beer because I didn't want to lose any of the haze that was in there. I really wanted to film a tasting for this beer, but I kept putting it off and I kept enjoying the beer and giving some of it to friends until the keg kicked last night. So now all I have is pictures and memories. All in all, it was a really good beer. It had this really intense, thick haze, and the high final gravity contributed to a really thick mouthfeel and a lot of residual sweetness in the beer. The entire time it was fermenting, it kept putting off these huge ester aromas, and that sort of worried me because I'm actually not a big fan of a lot of esters in beers, but by the time it actually got to the glass, it really didn't have that many esters left, and I think that just ended up contributing to some of the fruitiness. The beer had huge smell and taste notes of apricot and orange, and it was really just very much like drinking juice because of all the residual sweetness left. If I make this again, I will probably add some more hops on the hot side to get a little bit more bitterness to balance out the sweetness and fruitiness of the beer, and I would probably also replace some of these stone fruity, orangey hops with more grapefruity hops, but that's all personal preference, and and this beer was really just good. I think all in all, it was a very successful first brew on the digiboil system. I learned some lessons with temperature and with volumes, and I also learned that I have to actually film my tasting and not just put it off. I actually have done a couple more brew days since this one, and I've gotten better efficiency and I've gotten better volumes in the end. So I definitely learned a lot from this first brew. Thank you for watching. I hope this was at least a little bit informative and fun, and I highly recommend brewing this recipe or a recipe like this. I put it in the description of this video in text form so that you can brew it on your own. The next video should be a beer that I've actually already completed, and I'm very excited to show it off. It's really interesting, and I think it came out really well. Alright, give this video a like and subscribe, and stick around for the next video. Thank you very much. Bye.